Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, welcome, everybody. It's pretty amazing how things work out for themselves. I wish I had, a little bit more trust in the evidence that comes across my path. The evidence that pretty much smacks me in the face, and yet I'm just dazzled and amazed and taken by surprise every single time. Every single time something works out, something right, something works to my favor. When I have those worries and you worry about it. And even though I'm a very, very positive person, there are our day to day woes, aren't there? Our struggles, those things that we would like to run a little bit smoothly. And like I said, sometimes, you know, I should give more trust in that faith because, that evidence has come across my path over and over again. And I suspect, right, like a snowball on the top of the hill, that as it builds momentum and starts picking up speed, right, it would just be so kind of like what we were talking about yesterday, how things are so ridiculously obvious that you can't deny it, right? You can't shove it off to the side and pretend it's not there. Okay, you guys. Hi. If you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and we are flaking out, seriously flaking out on my first day off of the job that puts the roof over my head. And, being that highly sensitive and being that empath, I do beat myself up. I do, I don't intentionally allow the guilt and shame to surface in my relaxation, in my want of not doing anything, in that rebuilding of that energy so I can go right back to it next week and possibly shine even more. I understand, right? I deal with things as they come across my path. And if there's nothing happen, right? That's that opportunity that you take that nap, right? You run off and you do a little bit of grocery shopping and catching up on your life. Get a little bit ahead of the game. I did that, right? And I'm not going to take a lot of credit because I worked really hard at it and right, kept that momentum going. Today, it just kind of fell into my lap. It just kind of worked out that way, right? And, I have to give credit where credit is due. So thank you, whoever or whatever that, took a little bit of that, right? That, how is it possible, right? Or, I sure would like to do this, but, you know, you look at the tools that you have in the moment and you don't see how it's even possible. And so we can kind of, right? We can play that game with ourselves just as much as anybody can play that game with us or us play that game with others. And if you're hanging out with me, I hope that's not the case, but I do understand that we are all human. It is in a process that, we are going to learn to be better humans and we're going to learn to be able to rub shoulders with souls that, yesterday or last year or in the last lifetime we didn't rub so well. That as we get to better understand, right, as things are better revealed to us, that we have that trust in the evidence that keeps coming across our paths, that eventually, right, it will sink in. And I hope it's magnificent. I suspect that it is because I am dazzled and amazed by it all quite often, 100%. Okay, if you never popped into one of these lives before, like I said, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and we've been picking a powerful word each week for the past 30 weeks. This week, we're going to pick our 31st words. It is in my optimistic idea that I'm going to put a deck of powerful words together, words that that we can pull up and we can tear apart. We can put it back together. We can look at it in different perspectives, and this would be something that would be ongoing because even in this live show and being like we're going to be doing the 31st words today. 31st word. That's 30 powerful words. That's 30 weeks because we gave each word a week. And not only that, a couple of those weeks we did repeat on those words. We did the word acceptance over again. We did the word forgiveness over again, right? And we weren't at any loss for material, right? Every single day. So it is my hopes that I'm going to put a deck together out of these 54 words that we're going to choose, but it's in the sequencing that makes it so curious as to, right? Some things, like I said, we should be a little bit more trusting, a little bit more open, right? A little bit more giving rather than controlling of the story, and just allow what's meant to happen to happen. Just allow the conversations to happen, allow the feelings to happen, allow the answers to happen, because that all happens when you're more open, when you believe, right? And I guess that's kind of the message. Well, it's not the message. We haven't even picked the word yet, our 31st word. But already I've been babbling off. But yeah, let's pick that 31st word. We're going to bite on it, look at it in different perspectives. Today, it's just going to be a first perspective, the first thing that comes to my mind when we pick the word. If we get the word a second time, we'll decide in the moment whether just to tackle the word just for the day or tackle it for the whole week, or maybe take the blank word that we haven't covered above it next. But in the moment, that's what we'll do. Everybody, I hope you're having an amazing, amazing start to your week. For those of you who pop in later and put your feet in and right, taking a lesson, have a conversation, keep me company, right? It's all amazing. It is all truly amazing how things work out, right? There were a few things and everything just kind of settled down. And maybe it's just the eye of the storm, right? That's just giving us a breather, just letting us pop out of the water, catch our breath before we're pulled back down. But sometimes that's all we need. And sometimes as we get the lessons, right, we get a little bit more. So we don't need as much. Okay, you guys, I'm going to grab a highlighter here. Let's pick our word for the week. I know it's going to fit in quite nicely. I know it is. The sequencing hasn't failed us yet. I tell you, it really is quite amazing how these words pop up. We had this word community last week. I delved into it pretty deep, so deep that I actually carried it into my other shows, my Chatters Live and my Instagram. We pulled it in a little bit. So it did impact, right? If it comes back again, I missed something, we'll go into it again, but hopefully we're into a new word. Let's get these words done, and then we're just gonna be creative, and we're gonna create something else and work on something else and build on something else. And that's what movement's all about. I'd much rather make those choices and those movements myself than rather than get that crank, that 180 or the 360. Both are not fun. Okay, you guys, here we go. First impression, here we go. Wow, it's kind of like the word that we had last week a little bit, only in the aspect of that it is a social right? Last week, community is very much a social part, a social um, part of us that is very necessary in our mental well-being, right? Not always our social well-being, because we know when we move with others, right? Others are living their own stories, right? Directing their own stories, controlling their own stories, and sometimes we can become, what do you call those, extras in somebody else's story. But the word we got this week, you guys, is this word, companionship. That's an interesting word. That's a word I don't remember having on this list. But you know what? Let's work with that word. The first thing when it comes to companionship, I'm going to have to say my husband, right? He was uh, my greatest. He was somebody, when we talked about when I came into life, the how things work out, he was somebody I never even dreamed for myself. I never even thought it was a possibility that I could snag somebody so amazingly kind, so amazingly funny, so amazingly handsome, so amazingly sexy, right? Like, it was really quite uh well, it was a head turner for sure. And he snagged me right away because it was right. He swept me up in an experience I had never had before, because he treated me like I was the most precious, fragile. And if you've been hanging out with me for any length of time, you know I'm not too fragile. Right? But he treated me like a princess. And, I felt that love since the very beginning. And I have no idea how he could have fallen so fast in that. But I'd have to say, for most of those relationships that were important in my life, all kinds of relationships, not just in that companionship, but I guess it is companionship, right? Because our friends are our companions, our siblings are our companions, our friends in school, right? Our peers at work, they are companions, aren't they? But companions don't necessarily mean somebody who's going to support us in every way. A companion is somebody who moves with us, right? And they could be moving differently and still be moving with us. And that's the truth. And it was a big lesson for me. And I know we're going to talk about my husband, because that's what's the first thing that came to my mind. But we talked when we first came into my life today about those serendipities and that evidence and those things that come across your path that just dazzle and amaze you and just shock you sometimes, because it was the most, you were just thinking about it, right? It's been such a big worry, you didn't know how it was going to fix itself. And like magic, it's just happened. And then when it's just so consistent, but then you're consistently still worrying about things, and you're consistently still trying to control things and stuff, right? It just means that you don't trust in the evidence, right? And it makes me feel bad. So if I should have to feel guilt or shame for anything, well, that would be something, right? Because I think I'm at the point now that I should, have a trust in that evidence that comes across my path consistently, right? And sometimes, and most of the times, it is in whispers, but sometimes it's so frequent and so in tune with the moment of what I need, right? It's really hard to deny something like that, right? I met my husband. It was love at first sight, 100%. And It was mutual. My husband was in the military. I didn't know it at the time. We were just meeting and right playing that game when I was waitressing at the bar at the time, and he popped in, and I had known. All the girls let me know, you don't date the guys in the corner. You definitely don't date the military guys because they all got a gazillion girlfriends and all that stuff. And I went for a very long time, right? But it was time for me to meet somebody. And I wasn't necessarily looking, but at the same time, I knew that I was having a hard time saying no. And if I didn't pick, right, somebody was going to pick for me. And we all know what kind of road those kind of relationships go, because we end up as highly sensitives and as empaths in sacrificing ourselves and giving our own lives and our own movement up in order to support somebody else in their own movement, right? So we become supporters in that. But if we have this word companionship in that. We are moving together. And as we move together, as much as we might not have anything in common, and yet we're still, right? We're going in the same direction, but we all have different lessons and stuff. It's just because we don't want to do it alone. So we end up doing it with others. And sometimes we pick up lessons that aren't meant for, quite often we do, right? And because we don't want to do it alone, right? Most of the time, we're not picking up lessons that are for us. We're picking up whoever we're traveling with, we're picking up their lessons, right? And because we don't have an interest and it doesn't impact our lives, those lessons, but those lessons are still useful because whoever you're, right, moving with is using those lessons. And so we end up supporting others in those lessons, right? And that is companionship 100%. But I would have to look at it more as caregivership, right? Because you're caring for somebody. It's a big part of companionship. But caregivership doesn't always come in a reciprocal, well, that's a good word, reciprocal kind of way where it's being returned to you. And we can find that we are stressed by that, right? We can be triggered and have episodes of anxiety. We can beat ourselves up. We can allow that guilt and shame to come to the surface, right? Because it just naturally happens for us. But, in that moment, right? Unless we're catching it, right? Unless we're catching those breadcrumbs, unless it comes to our attention right away, right? It's just going to slip right by us and we're not even going to know, right? That we were not necessarily entrapped into uh, a relationship or a companionship or a partnership, but we got sucked into it, right? We did get sucked into it because it's our nature to do so. So when we look for that companionship, at least on my part, I picked my husband. My husband was 10 years younger than me. I thought he outclassed me, right? But he thought, right, that I outclassed him. We were very, very similar, right? We were very similar in our sensitivities to each other and to others around us. We had both came from traumatic childhoods, both of us, right? We're questioning whether or not to pass our genes down the line. But it was something we had to talk about, right? It was something that had to be discussed because we were two individuals, right? Trying to make movement for ourselves. And yet, right, we wanted this companionship with each other, right? I needed it and I wanted it. I needed it because I couldn't say no, right? I was going to end up with somebody who was going to probably, right, just drop me in the first well, this is how I felt anyway, because this was my mindset at the time, that not good enough. I was very surprised that my husband picked me, but I picked him too in the same instant. It took us a while, right? It took us a while to actually get it together because, well, he was in the military and he had field duties, and I didn't understand anything about the military. And when I didn't see him for a few months with no word, right after the first little, you know, few times of just flirting a little bit, knowing where it was going to go, but trying to take it slow in that. And then all of a sudden, there's 2 months have passed. You haven't even seen him. He walked in the door to the club, and I just flew into his arms. I dropped my tray on some stranger's table with all my money on it and everything and drinks and everything. And I just flew into his arm. And that man moved in with me the very next day. The very next day, he swept me up. He swept me up. I was so amazed, right? And I was fragile at that time because I'd never had a relationship like that. And I didn't want to mess it up. Number one, I didn't want to mess it up. And I wasn't quite sure how to maneuver in it, right? I was a little bit naive in the relationship end of it. And, you know, it happens. It truly does happen. And some of you know my story in that, and, right? Some as we move forward, all right, it's in the repetitiveness, it's in the patterning. I'll tell you that story again of when I was 311 pounds and I lost a tremendous amount of weight. And, my life changed drastically in that time and a little bit of time afterwards, right? Just to fall back into the old ways. And that's the way it goes sometimes, sometimes that's how it goes. And yet we beat ourselves up, and the guilt and shame, right, comes to the surface. That must be Nancy. That must be our Nancy. Thank you so much, everybody, for popping in. And for those of you who pop in later, I hope you're having an amazing, amazing beginning of your week. We got this word companionship. And if that is Nancy, say hi, because you know what? Nancy's new companion arrived today. It is Nancy. Right? Nancy got some companionship today. How did your day go today, Nancy? How did your day go today? I saw the smiles. That was absolutely amazing and very encouraging to see the smiles, right? Kathy and Andrew, I sent them the pictures that you sent me, the one of your apartment, your empty apartment. Oh my goodness. And, right, your new companion that showed up today. And I hope today you did a lot of smiling today, Nancy, because it has been a rough little bit of time for you. And like I was saying earlier in the live, sometimes, it's just these little bit of breaks, right? It's the eye in the storm where everything calms down. It's like popping up to the surface of the water to take a great big breath of air before getting dragged right back down into it, right? And, Nancy for sure knows that feeling. I know that feeling. I think if you're hanging out with me, most of us know that feeling. Oh, I haven't gone in. I have been in my messages myself all day long. Look at Nancy, my earthenware. I found a home for it. I found a home. I've got to pack it all up tomorrow morning. It's going to probably take me a couple of hours. There's almost 100 pieces of pottery there. Plus, I got a few pieces kicking around. I want to make sure that goes too. I'm only keeping one piece out of all of it, and that's the tall birch tree vase. That's the only one I'm keeping. Everything else is going to go. I'm so happy. I will never get stuck in a collection like that anymore. I have a couple more collections. I have my Mother Nature collection and I have my Smalls collection. And I think I'm hitting a couple hundred on my Smalls collection, but it sure is pretty cool, right? Little animals and fairies and Buddhas and right, dragons. Oh, I got big dragons too, right? So much. It is fun. Collections are fun, but they can become overwhelming. And you can see, look at that shelf there. Look at that shelf. There's three glass shelves there, and all of them are stuffed full of pottery, kiln pottery, wheel pottery, right? And some of those pieces are gallery pieces. And I got $300, you guys, for it all, right? Pretty close, I think, in the end to what I paid for it all. But it was only a couple dollars here, a couple of dollars here, over the past few years. So it's just like getting my money returned. So that's kind of good. And it came at a good opportunity. And that's what I was talking about. We stress and we worry how you're going to get this done, or right, and things just kind of work out. And that was my workout today, right? Was selling that thing. And it just was so smooth because everybody wants the stuff on there. But they want this piece and then they want just this piece and they just want that piece. And I'm not having a gazillion people come into my house for singular pieces of pottery. No, I want it all to go together. That's exactly what happened today. It's probably for resale. The person buying it is probably buying it because they have a flea market or they have a store or something and they're going to sell it in their store. I mean, just the top shelf of that is about $1,000 worth of pottery if you had to pay full price for it. So like I said, some of them are gallery pieces. Yeah, so I'm super happy. We're doing some house clearing. That was a big one for me. I've been trying to get rid of that stuff for a long time. I even took a whole bunch of it to work because we do silent auctions. We have a big picture window and we do auctions in the window. And I gave a whole bunch of pieces, and they put a little lot of my earthenware, my pottery together, my signed pieces, and they auctioned them off, right? Make a couple $100 or whatever, and it all goes towards hiring new staff, right? To give people jobs 100%. Yeah. So we've got this word companionship this week, you guys. Um, there is an aspect in my life, right, that calls for me in building relationships. But like I said, lots of us, we make those rash decisions, just like I made that real quick decision with my husband, right? I was in love with my husband, and this is the truth. I was in love with my husband even before I knew what his name was. I didn't even know what his name was, right? Because we only had these really quick connections, for a few times before we actually did meet. But then we went 2 months without seeing. And then, after not seeing each other for 2 months, well, it just kind of, right? It fast tracked from there. But it was a good choice. It was what I needed in the moment, and it was a fulfillment of a childhood dream, right? My fairy tale wedding, my Prince Charming, and that's who he was. And he was a highly sensitive, and he was very empathic, and he was woke at the time when I wasn't. When I wasn't. And right, and yet he still, right, he chased me, I didn't chase him, right? He shocked me. He was always so full of romance and surprises and right. And when he asked me to marry him, oh my goodness, I thought it was a joke. I didn't believe him. I didn't believe him. I never thought that was ever going to be in the cards for me, right? And we had only been going out for 6 months when we got engaged. But everything was so fast for us, and there was no question in how we felt for each other. But sometimes that's how it works. And he wasn't the first man that I had those quick connections with. Like I said, we were talking yesterday about codependency, right? Codependency and all those lessons I had to take because I'm so codependent in my relationships. I'm hoping, I'm optimistic that I'm a lot better now. I suspect that I am because I know I wouldn't be here right now if I was codependent because I would be right attached to the hip. No, no doubt. Okay, you guys. Companionship is the word this week. Hi, Melvin. Oh, Melvin never got married, Melvin? You know, I never thought I was going to get married. I never even thought I was ever going to have a boyfriend. I thought I was going to be by myself my entire life, and that's the truth. And even in my age right now, I say to myself, I'm going to be by myself for the rest of my life. But we got this word companionship this week, right? Things come across my path for a reason. So, you know, I'm not going to read too much into it, but I'm going to take the lessons in. And, looking back at an amazing marriage is it's not hard for me anymore. And I know that the person he was is not the person that he is right now, right? So there is no chance because he's I'm not going to say grown because sometimes we don't grow, right? But I suspect that he's grown. There was a lot about him that it was absolutely spectacular, right? That made him a trophy husband. He was. Oh, he was he was amazing and it was shattering when that marriage fell apart, right? But I'm not shutting myself off from those possibilities that it wouldn't happen again because I know it's happened before and I know how strongly and how quickly we can be swept up in it and I don't doubt for a moment, right? That if it's in the cards, it's in the cards and I don't have a say in it. It's just going to happen. And it would just happen for you like that too, Malvin, and for anybody because, there's somebody, I know it sounds corny, but there's somebody out there for everybody, right? And you just keep moving forward, right? Leaving yourself open to the possibilities, and you have no idea of the possibilities. You have no idea of the dazzle and amaze that can come across your path. Okay, you guys, that's my good chair. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for coming into the live tonight, you guys. Bye bye.